Yo, 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 shalom, 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 family. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good day. Greetings to you guys, wherever you're listening in from around the world. We would like to welcome you guys back to another episode of the Daily Bread Podcast, the place that we read the Word of Yahuah daily. And I'm your host and your brother, Dalayahu Yasharal. And the podcast is presented to you guys by Living for Yahuah Ministries. And we gather here today, family, to read another chapter. Today we are moving on in our reading and arriving to Judges chapter 18, also known as Shaphatym, right? So for those of you who may be new, joining us for the first time, just so you guys understand, we will, before we get into the chapter, we will open up in prayer. And before we pray, we give you guys a brief recap. So we do the recap, prayer, read our chapter, talk about any commentary, notes, anything that stuck out at the end. What lesson did we learn, if any, right? So with all that said, let's get it started. Thanks for joining us. And so it's recap. As far as the recap goes, just understand we're reading the book or the Bible from the front to the back. We finished the Torah. The Torah is the first 5 books of the scriptures. And you can't understand the scriptures without reading the Torah. That's the problem where modern religion goes wrong, right? Because the Torah is the covenant. I want to say it's the first essential covenant, but it contains a couple covenants in that first 5 books that everything else is going to be founded on, based on, and revolve around. Everything we going to read later, as far as chronicles and what happened to this person and what happened to that person, is all going to be relative based on understanding the Torah and what they should have been doing or should not have been doing. So important. So yeah, we read Genesis, the creation story, the beginning by Abraham family, lead us to Exodus, the obviously slavery of the children of Yasharal and redemption of the children of Yasharal. That led us into the wilderness, where we got the laws for how to officiate this Torah and this culture, right? The laws for the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood. The book of Leviticus contains all of the regulations, so to speak, about making offerings and etc. We also read book of Numbers, which is a capsule, a summary of 40 years in the wilderness that the children of Yasharal spent and the lessons learned. And it ultimately led to Deuteronomy, the 40th year in the wilderness, where Moses recaps everything. So that was very interesting. If you're not familiar with that, please refresh yourself, refer to the previous episodes, and catch up. All that said, that led us into the book of Yahusha, aka Joshua, who led us into the promised land, and it gives us context to where we arrive at now in the book of Judges, where every man is seemingly doing what is right in his own eyes. Sometimes we bad leadership, sometimes we got good leadership. Yahuwah raising up different people from different tribes to lead his people. So let's see what how the tables turn this week or this day. See how the story develops as we continue to read and refresh ourselves on our history, culture, and desire and will of the Most High, right? So with all that said, what's important to understand is that Yahuwah doesn't change. The same Yahuwah who delivered Moses and was with Jacob and Yehusuf or Joseph, the same one who's with us now. So with that said, let's make sure we come into his presence with praise and thanksgiving, come into his presence with respect, worship, humility, right? So before we jump into his word, let's pray, right? So we're going to jump into this prayer right here, the model prayer, where we going to entreat Yahuwah, right? Make sure we clean ceremonially, right? Before we come into his presence, and just get forgiveness for whatever may have happened yesterday, right? So we can have a clean slate today. That's one of the most, if you don't realize or not, maybe one of the most important benefits of listening to something like this is the prayer, right? And being covered in prayer, which is a spiritual tool, asset, right? So with all that said, let's stand, face the direction of Jerusalem, lift up our hands, open our palms, and Pray to Yahuwah. Baruch atah Yahuwah. Eloheinu. Hamalat Ulam. Our Father who is in the heavens, permit your name to be set apart. Permit your reign to come. Permit your desire to be done on earth as it is in heaven. We come before you this day, asking and praying that you give us this day our daily bread. Ask that you forgive us for our sins and our trespasses against your Torah and your commands, as we forgive our debtors. We also ask that you allow us not to be led into trial, but save us and deliver us from the wicked one. For yours is the reign, the power, and the esteem, now and forever. These things and more, we pray in the name of our Mashiach and Sovereign, Yahusha. Allah Yahuwah, Tuda Yahuwah, Yabarakak Yahuwah, Aman. Aman. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. Cool, man. So, with all that said, like I said, let's jump into our chapter for the day and see what wisdom is revealed. You know, that's the thing about it. We never know, we never know, like, how the word of Yahuwah will impact us or our day or our situation. And that's the beauty of it, because everybody can be going through something different. Read a particular psalm or particular passage in the Torah, and it's going to affect us differently, but it definitely affects us nonetheless. This law, this Torah, it's relevant to everybody in the world, not just the children of Yasharal. But as we see, we were the ones who his children, he called us his children. He entrusted us with the word, and because we disobeyed, he's making an example of us before the nations, which only begs the question: so if he did this to his own children, what is he going to do to the nations, right? Who haven't hearkened and who've had power in the earth, who understand this Torah, who know of it, right? That's the question we all got to work out with fear and trembling, right? Nonetheless, chapter 18, Judges chapter 18, verse 1. Let's see what it's talking about. In those days, there was no sovereign in Yasharal, no king in Yasharal, okay? You see, just like today, right? And in those days, the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. For until then, no inheritance among the tribes of Yasharal had fallen to them. Wow, that's crazy. But Dan, they was on the other side of the river, because if you remember reading the Torah, they inherited. Dan was in the north. It was Manasseh and Ephraim that was on the other side of the river. Okay, I'm sorry. Just making sure. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Verse 2. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to explore it. And they said to them, go and explore the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. So they ended up, out of all the people, out of all the places, children of Dan could have ended up, it was Yahuwah will to have them go by this idolatrous priest house and stay there with them. Okay. Verse 3. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite, or Louis. And they turned aside and said to him, who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? And what is your business here? Trust me, that's how it be when you're in a foreign place. That's what people really want to know. Like, what are you doing here? Why did you come? What are you doing? Like, nothing has changed. Verse 4. And he said to them, this is how Micah dealt with me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest. So we got mercenary priests now. Hey, it is what it is. Gotta make a living. Verse 5. And they said to him, inquire of Elohim, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed. So they go to the idolatrous mercenary priests, and not to Jerusalem. But Jerusalem wasn't established at this time. That's interesting to note. Verse 6. And the priest said to them, go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of Yahuwah. Man, that sound good. That sound really good. Somebody just tell you that. You just go, yellow brick road, right? Can't lose. Verse 7. Then the 5 men departed and came to Lachish, or Laish, and saw the people who were there, how they lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealings with anyone. Very interesting. I've observed some societies like that too. We all, it's like everybody looking for the same thing. Like, we just want to chill out. But in this case, they were looking for these unsuspecting people to try to take their land. But everybody looking for this ideal place that's just peaceful and disconnected from everything else, right? Interesting. Verse 9. They said, arise and let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go to enter in and possess the land. Oh, wait. You skip verse 8. Sorry, pull it. Let's back up. So they see these people was lacking nothing that is in the earth, possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians, had no dealings with anyone. Verse 8. And when they came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshcol, so they went back home, their brothers said to them, what do you report? And they say, arise, let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go to enter in and possess the land. Not to keep interjecting, but we got to remember, like, this was the lay of the land at this time. Like, it wasn't no democracies and this and that. You want some more territory, you got to go take it. It ain't no other way. Even though this was, I want to say our own people, it wasn't our own people. It was in the borders of the land, but it was still not fully cleared out of the other nations that were living among us. So, very interesting time in the history of Yasharal. So they saying, let's go take this land straight up. Verse 10. As soon as you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people. They don't know what's going on. The land is spacious, for Elohim has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. So 600 men of the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons of war, set out from Zorah and Eshcol. Verse 12. And went up in the camp at Kiryat Yearim in Yehuda. On this account, that place is called Mahane Dan to this day. Behold, it is west of Kiryat Yearim. So Mahane Dan means camp of Dan, right? Not surprisingly, camp of Dan. So verse 13. And they passed on from there to the hill country of Ephraim to the house of Micah. Got to go back there because he the one told us everything was going to be good. All right. Verse 14. Then the 5 men who had gone to scout out the country of Lachish said to their brothers, do you know that in these houses there are an ephod, household mighty ones, aka teraphim, a carved image and a metal image? Now, therefore, consider what you will do. Now, pause. Consider what they should do. Now, this is very interesting because all that stuff they named is bad. It's idolatrous. If they were going to do anything, they should have corrected them people and told them that's wrong. That's what they should have did. They should have ran there and took it and destroyed the idols according to the Torah. They should have destroyed it, crushed it, burnt it, scattered it. That's what they should have did. But Dan and all the northern tribes, Manasseh, Ephraim, always been kind of prone to the idols. So let's see what they do. But we had to pause just to interject. What should they have done? And this is why we read. This is why we read, for these contextual scenarios to understand the application of righteousness. I digress. Verse 15. And they turned aside there and came to the house of the young Levite at the home of Micah and asked him about his welfare. You good? Everything good? Cool. Verse 16. Now the 600 men of the Danites, armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate. So they could have did anything they wanted to do. They was deep. They was really, really deep. And the 5 men who had gone to scout out the land went up and entered and took the carved image. So them boys say, let me finish. And they took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, while the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. So them boys beefing about the idols. Yeah, man. And so what I want to say is this also is like if you pay attention, if you notice, and if you read the Torah or the book of previously mentioned book of Yahushua, aka Joshua, you notice it's the same scenario that happened when they took Jericho, right? The ones who spied out the land came back. They was deep. But the ones who made contact the first time go back and make contact with the person who they made contact with when they was touring the land, and have an exchange and whatever the case may be. But that's the same exact scenario that happened in the book of Yahushua. So in this case, they let idolatry set up, and they came back deep and they took the idols, which is crazy work. That's, if you ever seen some crazy work, that's crazy work. Verse 18. And when these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, the priest said to them, the hired mercenary Levite priest said to them, what are you doing? Verse 19. And they said to him, they say, keep quiet, put your hands on your mouth and come with us and be to us a father and a priest. It is better for you to be a priest to the house of one. Is it better for you to be priest to the house of one man, or be priest to the house of a tribe and a clan in Yasharal? Man, of course it's better to be priest to the house of a whole clan, people in Yasharal. But the point is, it's like we all digressing. That's what the Levites are already doing. They already priests in different parts and clans of Yasharal. But this just goes to show at this time there was no cohesiveness in the leadership and the administration of the Torah, right? Because they were supposed to be Levites in Jerusalem, according to the place where he put his name, according to the Torah. And then in every district, in every region, they had to have allocated not urban areas, but suburban areas allocated to them in every place, in all the tribes and territories of Yasharal. So that was the concept from the beginning. It's supposed to be Levites in every territory that go back and forth to the main capital city and report things back. So they were the couriers, priests, butchers, doctors, lawyers, everything, right? But this is like more of an idolatrous sense. They come be our mercenary idolatrous priests of Levi for us. Like, that's crazy. Anyway, just to explain the context. So verse 20. And the priest's heart was glad. Oh, wow, I'm in the big leagues now. He took the ephod and the household gods and the carved images and went along with the people. This is not good, family. This is not, just so we understand what is happening, what context. This is not good. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Just put it like that. Verse 21. And so they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the livestock and the goods in front of them. When they had gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out, and they overtook the people of Dan. He said, "No, we want our priests back and our idols. You tripping." Verse 23. And they shouted to the people of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, "What is the matter with you that you come with such a company? Nigga, you just robbed me, man. What? What? You just robbed my house, bro." Verse 8, man. This is some. Boy, if you don't understand who Hebrew people is, you just gotta really read the scriptures with context, because this is some real Hebrew stuff, some real ghetto stuff is happening right now. This don't happen in every community, for real. Verse 24. And he said, "You take my mighty ones that I made and the priests and go away, and what have I left? How then do you ask me what is the matter with you?" This is black dialogue all day. You tripping. Verse 25. And the people of Dan said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household." Hey, so straight up, this is straight nigga business. Them boys making it. Hey, pipe down. You see me deep now. Pipe down, buddy. You tripping. Hey, them boys in no uncertain terms told him what, hey, I'm gonna let my young boy to cut your head off. Them boy gonna fall on you. You tripping. You got to turn back around and go in the house, buddy. Straight up. This is real Hebrew business. Black people activities all day. Verse 26. Then the people of Dan went their way. Yeah, I bet they did. I bet they did, because the people was clear. Dan went their way, but them other people went their way too, because them people, they were very clear with him. We'll hurt you. And when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. I bet he did. But the people then took what Micah had made. Sad story, man. Why did they do that? And the priests who belonged to him, and they came to Lachish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting. Oh man, them boys, Dan is off the chain. They doing them dirty, and they struck him with the edge of the sword and burnt the city with fire. These them days where everybody doing was right in their own eyes. Just remember that. And there was no deliverer. That's the key, right? This is really the key, right? The last book was called Yahushua, the deliverance of Yahuwah. We was together, we conquered the land. Everywhere we went, no defeats. Now this is Shaphatym, not Shaphat, singular, not the judge. This is the judges. One doing what he want to, they doing. Dan is off the chain right now. There was no deliverer because it was far from Sidon. But it's still Yahuwah will, because this was still Canaanite people that was still in the land. And they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beat Rahab. Then they rebuilt the city and lived in it. Straight like that. Hey, this is for us. And they named the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their ancestors. And of course, this is a interesting, what they call it, entendre, double entendre, because the book is Shaphatym, Shaphat. We're talking about judges, right? This particular chapter is about Dan being the Dan judging. Dan is judge as well. Dan is like, I ain't gonna say another word for judge because it means judge. Shaphat means judge. Shaphat is like a ruler, leader. Dan means judge. Dalayahu is Elohim is the judge. All Elohim, Dan is judge. But interesting, Dan is Shaphat, Shaphatym, Shaphat, Dan. This is a whole little double entendre. Both of them words are, how do they call it? Synonyms. Dan, Shaphat, they synonyms. In this case, Dan is a Shaphatym. Cool. I hope that makes sense for you. If not, leave me a comment. And they named the city Dan after the ancestor Dan, who was born to Yasharal. But the name of the city was Lachish at the first. Hope that makes sense. And the people of Dan set up the carved. Oh man, this is the worst part of the whole story. And the people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves. And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, and his sons were priests. Moses' son went left with him. Moses' grandson. And the sons and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. And so they set up Micah's carved image that he made as long as the house of Elohim was at Shiloh. Right. So that was a temporary period. Let me say something. What shall we say then? Well, I hope that made sense for everybody. First of all, I hope everybody was able to follow what we was reading about and really understand. I hope the commentary wasn't too much, but added context to the scriptures. Because again, we got to remember, this is a book in the history and just words in the language that very, very, very few people on the earth actually understand with context. Few people. So with that said, what shall we say then? Almost make you want to bring tears to your eyes. You know, it just showed that idolatry is very much attached to not Hebrew culture. What can I say? Black culture. It's just attached to ancient culture. The world is idolatrous. That's the reason why we came out of Egypt making calves. That's the reason why Yahuwah put it in the cup. It wouldn't be in the commandment if it wasn't happening already and it wasn't prevalent, right? So it's the reason why his commandments made not to make images, right? We discussed this in the last chapter. What the molded images, the idols, the idol. It's a doll. Dolls, action figures, they all idols. And it's sad, you know, just that we just so intertwined with this topic at an early point in our history. And like I said, it's just the ancient world is hard to disassociate it from idols. And that's why he told Yasharal to be set apart. But when we say Yasharal be set apart, that has never been the case for the most part. Yehuda, yes. When you separate the nation of Yasharal, 12 tribes, Yehuda has always been a little bit more clinging to Yahuwah. But Israel, as far as the 10 northern tribes, Yasharal, this is why from Dan, the tribe of Dan, which is the northernmost tribe, like around Mount Hermon, which is way north of Jerusalem. Those 10 northern tribes, for the most part, if you generally speaking, those 10 northern tribes, when they come in a developed part of the history, when we have kings and from the United Nations of Shaul, Solomon, David, who had United Nations of Yasharal, who ruled over the whole 12 tribes. And from that point where it split officially, the northern tribes have always been a little bit more idolatrous, right? And from this time, from the time before we even had those kings who ruled over the United Nations of Yasharal, and then the fractured nations of Yasharal, before then, Dan was associated with idolatry, and it's sad. It's just sad. Like from out the gate, out of slavery, first couple generations into the promised land, the northern. This is why the northern nations have always been associated with idolatry, and they always talked about that. It was two. All right, we had Jerusalem, the worship center that David and Solomon built, right? The kings over the whole United Nation of Yasharal. After that, it became fractured. But when it became fractured, it was two places that were centers of the idolatrous worship. One was Dan. Let me get it out of the way. One was Dan, but that was so far north, and the other was what they always talk about, Samaria, right? That's the place that Ahab is gonna make famous later for idolatry. That was like closer to Jerusalem here. Samaria, you would get there first, going up from Jerusalem. So you get Samaria, and then Dan is at the top. But Dan and Samaria, those were the two places in the nation, the divided nation of Israel, that was known for idolatrous. They were idolatrous centers of worship, where they had a statue set up that was like, once the Judah split from Israel ain't want the people to go to Jerusalem to worship. So they built two worship centers. One was in Samaria, what Ahab and them built, and etc. said that around that area was like lower in Israel. And then the other one was Dan. Dan always had their own idolatrous worship center. So we see where this history comes from, where it lies from the beginning, when they came to spy out the land, dispossess some more Canaanites, but they took their pagan ways. And with all that history being put into context, what can we say about it? We just say that it's so imperative for us to be set apart. We wonder, we use the word holy in the Christian church. They say holy, Catholic, holy this and holy that. Why they saying holy? Why they literally surrounded by idols? Like, it's unfathomable, the idolatrous worship in the modern era. But for us who return into Yahuwah in spirit and truth, again, acknowledging his covenants, honoring the covenants, we paying attention, we learning our history, we learning from our mistakes. It's just so important for us to remain set apart, man. It's not, nobody said it was going to be easy, but it's important to just be among the like-minded. That's something I keep hearing, a message that's been echoed to me in some of my business dealings here on the continent of Africa, and in my travels. It has been to deal and align with the like-minded. And that's the whole reason we form this community, right? Because we know it's not really possible for all of us to live like in the same community, be neighbors literally next to each other. But having an online community is something that, with the technology available, it's the least we can do, right? So that's what we're trying to do. And we try to support and give guidance, give counsel, give teachings, give lessons, give context, most of all, provide clarity, and try to set an example for what we should do. But it's just, it can be sad to see sometimes how we just led down the path of idolatry. I mean, you just look at the place where we're born. There's statues everywhere, every town, from the smallest statue outside your local arena or public gathering place, just like they did in times of old, to the biggest record-breaking world tower statue idols. Like, it got idols, that so many idols, and it's become commonplace for us. But it's important to remember, we the children of Yasharal. Again, like I alluded to last chapter, Yahuwah said it plainly a couple times. He always reiterate this. You saw no form when I spoke to you. When he gave us that commandment, you ain't see a giraffe in the sky. You ain't see an elephant in the sky. He ain't speak out of the mouth of the donkey to the nation of Yasharal. He spoke through thick cloud and darkness, lightning and thunder, just spooky, scary hours. Just remember that. Fear, just hear and fear. So that's what we need to remember. That's what we need to do. So with that said, I'm gonna leave it right there, man. I hope y'all tell me what y'all gathered from it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, help the platform reach a wider audience. And again, for those of you who have donated to the channel, we appreciate you guys. This wouldn't be possible without viewers like you. And with that said, we'll see you guys in the next chapter. Peace in the Middle East. Shalom, family.